I finished editing my drawing, and now it's time to set up my different layouts. I'm going to be using the Page Setup Manager to help me define how each layout will appear. Because my submittal package is going to different counties, I'm going to use plot styles to comply with each county's layer standards. Plot styles can be defined using a color table or a standards table. Autocad comes with several plot styles already defined. Autocad drawings use CTB plot styles by default. You cannot mix and match with one layout using a CTB style and one layout using an STB style. Your drawing can only use one format or another, not both. You can convert a drawing using a CTB plot style to use an STB plot style and vice versa. The Page Setup Manager is a helpful tool when I'm ready to add some layouts. One of the viewports on the sheet will be used to display a named view, and I want to plot that sheet using grayscale, so I'm going to apply a plot style to that sheet. I also will use layer overrides to control the properties of some of my elements in the viewports in order to comply with each county's requirements. I'm going to start working with a layout called Kitchen Detail. I activate that layout, and right now it's an empty sheet with just the title block. I want to verify that I'm on the viewport layer before I place my viewport. I always set my viewport layer to no plot. That way the viewport boundary is not visible in my plots. I want to create a viewport, so I go to the Layout ribbon. I select the rectangular viewport tool from the Layout Viewports panel on the ribbon. I place the viewport by drawing a rectangle, just two opposite corners. I want to assign a named view to this viewport, so I switch to the View ribbon. I double-click inside the viewport to activate model space. I select the named view called Kitchen from the view list. I click outside the viewport to return to paper space. I adjust the size of the viewport using the grips. I select the viewport and set the display to locked so the view doesn't change. I press Escape to release the selection. I right-click on the Kitchen Detail tab and select Page Setup Manager. Then I select Modify. I'll set it to print to an Adobe PDF file. I'll set the paper size to tabloid. I'll set the plot style to grayscale.ctb. This will plot the sheet as grayscale. Next, I press Preview to see what the layout will look like. It looks fine, so I press Exit and press OK. I close the Page Setup Manager. I'm going to switch to the San Francisco County layout. I right-click on the Layout tab and select Page Setup Manager. Then I select Modify. I'll set it to print to an Adobe PDF file. I'll set the paper size to tabloid. I'll set the plot style to SFCPW mono.ctb. This is a plot style I downloaded from the San Francisco County Public Works website. As I said earlier, many county public works departments will provide builders with the plot styles required for submitting building plans. If it's not on their website, just ask someone in the department. They will usually email it to you or provide you with a link at no charge. To see what the plot style looks like, I can click on the Edit icon next to the plot style name. I'll select the Table View tab. You see that all the colors are set to plot to black. In the case of some colors, Convert to Grayscale is enabled. The Form View is just a different format than the Table View. The information is the same. If I look at the color red, the grayscale is turned off. If I look at the color blue, the grayscale is turned on. I press Save and Close. I'm going to switch to the Alameda County layout. I right-click on the Layout tab and select Page Setup Manager. Then I select Modify. I'll set it to print to an Adobe PDF file. I'll set the paper size to tabloid. For this layout, I won't select any plot style table. This means the layout will plot based on the layer properties for the viewports on that layout. I press OK. I'm done using Page Setup Manager and plot styles. I want to activate model space in the viewport. To activate model space, I double-click inside the viewport. I can always double-click the status bar to verify that I'm in model space. I'll switch to the Home ribbon and launch the Layer Properties Manager from the Layers panel. I'm going to apply some layer overrides to the left viewport. Layer overrides allow you to assign a set of unique display properties for each layout viewport. These settings override the layer properties in the Model tab and in other viewports. Each viewport can use different layer properties depending on what you want to see. I'll change the dim layers VP color to green. I'll change the fixture layers VP color to cyan. I'll freeze the furniture layer in the viewport. I'll change the wall layers VP color to white, and I'll switch back to paper space. I'm going to activate model space in the right viewport. I'll expand the Layer Properties Manager and apply some new layer overrides. I'll change the dimensions layer to red. I'll change the furniture layer to green and the fixture layers to magenta. I double-click outside the viewport to return to paper space. You can compare how the two viewports look with the different layer overrides. Keep in mind that if any plot styles are applied to a layout, the plot style controls how the plot will appear. Any layer overrides will be ignored, just as the default appearance of the elements are ignored. To remove the layer overrides, I simply select the viewport, right-click, and choose Remove Viewport Overrides for all layers. I'm going to switch to the apartment layout. I want to modify the viewport so it only displays the apartment on the left side of the duplex. I'm going to start by rotating the viewport. I rotate the viewport 90 degrees. I select the Rotate tool, I select the viewport, I press Enter, I select my base point, and then use my cursor to rotate the viewport 90 degrees. I'm going to enlarge the viewport using the grips. Once the viewport is the correct size, I'm going to double-click inside the viewport to activate model space. I'm going to use Zoom Window to enlarge the view so it fills the viewport. I return to paper space. I want to modify the viewport boundary so I can focus just on a single apartment unit. I select Clip from the ribbon. I select the viewport to be modified. I right-click and select Polygonal. I trace around the apartment outline to define my viewport boundary. I'm basically using a polyline to create a polygonal boundary. I can right-click and select Close to close the boundary. I can use the grips on the viewport boundary to adjust the viewport shape if needed. To recap, I assigned a named view to a viewport in one of my layouts. I used the Page Setup Manager tool to control how a layout would be plotted. I applied plot styles to control how objects would appear in a plot. I applied layer overrides to change the display of some of the elements in a viewport. I customized the size and shape of a viewport boundary using the Clip tool as well as the viewport grips. Autocad comes with several standard scales, but sometimes we need to add a custom scale. And sometimes for some reason the scale list will get corrupted and needs to be reset. You can use the Edit Scale List command to reset your scale list as well as add custom scales. I'm working in a mechanical drawing for a plate. I want to create a detail view of this area. I switch to my layout. I've placed a circle on my sheet to convert to a viewport for the detail view. I select the Layout tab on the ribbon. I select the Object tool on the Layout Viewports panel. I select the circle to convert it to a viewport. I click inside the viewport to activate model space and then position the detail view inside the viewport. I click outside the viewport to return to paper space. I want to apply a viewport scale to the viewport. I select the viewport. I right-click and select Properties. I can preview the different scales before I decide which scale to be applied. I look at the 2:1 scale, and that scale is too small. I look at the 4:1 scale, and that scale is too big. I want to apply a 3:1 scale, but I don't have that scale available in the list. I close the Properties palette. I press Escape to release my selection. To add a scale to my scale list, I need to be in Model Space. I switch to the Model tab. I go to the status bar and select Custom at the bottom of the scale list. I select Add. I type 3:1 for the name. I change the paper units to 3. I click OK. I use the Move Down button to position the 3:1 scale between the 2:1 and 4:1 scales. I click OK. I switch back to the Layout tab. I select the Viewport. I right-click and select Properties. I set the scale to 3:1. The view looks correct. I set my display to Locked to retain my settings. I press Escape to release my selection. In this lesson, you learned how to add a custom scale to your scale list and apply the custom scale to a viewport in a layout. Autocad comes with a list of commonly used scales, but every once in a while, you may need a custom scale so that your views look correct. I'm going to review how to use the batch plot tool inside of Autocad to publish to a PDF file. Before I plot, I want to verify that all my layouts are using the correct page setup. I right-click on the San Francisco County tab and select Page Setup Manager. The current layout is displayed as San Francisco County. That's the name of the Layout tab. The current page setup is called SF County. I highlight the SF County page setup in the Page Setups list. I select Modify. Notice the name for the page setup is called SF County. The page setup is using the correct options, so I press OK. I close the Page Setup Manager. I right-click on the Alameda County tab and select Page Setup Manager. The current layout is displayed as Alameda County. That's the name of the Layout tab, and the current page setup is displayed as None. I highlight the Alameda County page setup in the Page Setups list. I select New. I type Alameda for the new page setup name. I press OK. Notice the name for the page setup is called Alameda. The page setup is using the correct options, so I press OK. If I look in the Page Setups list, I see that the Kitchen Detail layout is using a page setup called Kitchen Detail, and the Apartment layout is using a page setup called Apartment. I close the Page Setup Manager. I want to print all the layouts in my drawing. To do that, I'm going to use the Batch Plot command. I go to the Application menu and select Print Batch Plot. Under the Publish To drop-down list, I can publish to a DWF or PDF format. In the sheet list, I can remove the layouts I don't want to plot. I highlight the Model tab, right-click, and select Remove. I double-check to see that each sheet is using the correct page setup. If it isn't, or if I want to assign a new page setup, I can change it using the drop-down list. If I want to modify where the PDF is going to be saved, I can select the Publish options. I can specify the location to save the file. I enable multi-sheet file to create a single file with all the selected sheets. I disable prompt for name, so by default the file name will be used for the PDF file. I enable all the data options and press OK. I'm asked if I want to save the current list of sheets. I would want to save if I plan on creating this plot more than once, but I'll press no. There is a slight pause, and you'll see a dialog advising the print job is being plotted in the background so you can keep working. I press the close button. A window pop-up will display in the lower right corner when the plot is completed. I open up the PDF, and I can quickly flip through the layouts to review the plots. I want to check each sheet to verify that it used the correct plot style. You may recall that I applied a grayscale CTB to the kitchen detail, and I assigned layer overrides to the Alameda County sheet. In this lesson, we used page setups to control how layouts would be plotted and used the batch plot tool to plot several layouts in a drawing. Batch plot can be used to plot more than one drawing and more than one layout. We live in a digital world, and we rely less and less on paper. In fact, most offices today are almost entirely paperless. The eTransmittal tool inside of Autocad allows you to gather up all the necessary project files into a single zip file, which can then be emailed out to coworkers, vendors, or subcontractors. The real power of the eTransmittal is that it will automatically collect images used in your title block, like your company logo, and any attached external references. The ability to include XREFs is optional, but it can be useful. To create a transmittal package, you can type eTransmit to launch the transmittal dialog, or go to the application menu and select the Publish option. To add files to the package, simply select the Add File button. To check what is being included, as well as manage some of the output in the transmittal package, select Transmittal Setups. You can create a custom setup for each package type you send, or modify the standard setup. I click Modify. I like sending my transmittals as a zip file, but you can also select to gather all the files into a folder. This is useful if you want to upload a set of project files onto a server or into an archive area. Archiving your project at different submittal stages is very helpful to create an audit trail. eTransmit provides you with a quick and easy tool to help you create those archive files. Under File Formats, you can select the file format you want to use. I tend to save as AutoCAD 2000, just to ensure that the recipient of the transmittal package can open the drawings. The option to explode AEC objects basically eliminates the proxy error dialog box that many users see when opening a drawing with AEC custom objects. If you are using dynamic or parametric objects or any other custom content, it might not convert back properly, so it's a good idea to save in the desired format and then double check that the drawing opens properly before emailing it to a recipient. As a courtesy, I set the default plotter to none, because otherwise they will see my plotter information in the drawing if they go to plot. And since they aren't connected to my plotter, that's kind of annoying to anyone receiving the drawing. I normally bind my external references. This inserts the XREF as a block, but maintains the layers to show as XREF layers to help the recipient identify the XREF objects. I also enable Purge to keep the file size down. I always include fonts, textures, files from data links, and photometric files. This ensures that the drawing will look nice. The recipient won't have to play that substitute the font game, which may mess up how dimensions and the text look. Photometric web files and textures from materials ensure that if they decide to render, the rendering will look okay. Once I have my settings filled out correctly, I click OK. I close the Setup dialog. If I select the Files tab, I can see all the files that are being included in the transmittal. This can be useful just to see what they are going to receive. I also like to view the report because that will give me a heads up on any errors or issues with the transmittal. I click Close. I click OK to create the transmittal package. I usually include the date in my file name so the recipient can easily identify the most recent transmittal or locate a specific transmittal based on the date. This is also useful if you are using eTransmit to archive your project at certain stages of development. A good tip is to format the date using the year, month, and day to help Windows sort the files in order. I click Save. The zip file is created. Just browse to the folder where it was saved and attach it to an email or upload it to a server. The eTransmit tool is an easy way for you to collect all the necessary files within a project. Use this tool to email drawing packages to coworkers, vendors, or subcontractors. It can also be used to create a snapshot of your project